Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. This week I am just going to run you through what happened. So, as I think I said 2 episodes ago, we made the decision that we would not be setting up the pony trekking into the jungle. SARS had made tourism wholly dry up, and there was no point putting money into a tourist thing and setting that all up when there was nobody to use it. And as I'd mentioned at the start, I was on a timeline of 1 year. I didn't want to be away any longer than that, so that I could be with my dad. But I had committed to the year. So when I came back from my trip to see my mum and dad and got back to Charm Beach, it was a bit, what do I do now? I've got 6 months. My brother and his girlfriend, who's now his wife, they came out and we went to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and I travelled back on my own down the Mekong River, stayed in Phnom Penh, which was horrible, and I didn't want to ever go back there. And then had a day on the beach in southern Cambodia, and then made my way back on land on the trains back to Koh Phangan for Charm Beach, and then my sister came out to visit. We stayed mainly on the island then. I never went over to Koh Tao because I think, as I told you, when I went out that first week when Paul had come off the motorbike, I did go and do my paddy course, which was not great. So Koh Tao's diving, pretty much diving is, at the time, was all there was on Koh Tao, and so that wasn't an island that I visited. I went up to Bangkok with Dewey a couple of times to help out with her visa application to come to the UK to be with Dave. I went... When did I did go down to KL in Malaysia. I met another girl on the minibus. So travelling on a minibus in Thailand was where, they're like maybe 3 seats at the back, 2 seats, 2 seats, or even 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 3. In Thailand, at least 4. And as you're driving along and you can see the driver going as he's going to fall asleep, and you pull over at the next stop and he buys one of the little medicine bottles full of Red Bull, and then you're safe because he's not going to sleep at all driving from then on. So she came with me and we went to stay with my nephew, who's married to Faustina, his Malaysian-born wife, and she wasn't then. They were just girlfriend and boyfriend. I stayed with them for a bit, and then I flew out from there. I don't know where. I can't think now. But when I got back to Charm Beach, I had the opportunity to go to Wat Khao Tum, which is a monastery, a Wat, on the island. Paul had been previously, and he said, "Oh, you'll love it. You'll be able to cope with it." And I said, "But why couldn't you?" And it's a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And what appealed to me was the meditation. I had tried it, and I just didn't gel, didn't work for me, couldn't do it. Which in a sense is unlike me, because I when I get focused on something, I'm very disciplined about doing it, but it just wasn't coming. So I'd sort of given up. But Paul said, you definitely learn to meditate in there. He failed because he couldn't smoke, and he couldn't drink, and he had to get up early. So I thought, yeah, I've got nothing else on, and it, failing that would be an experience, and it was. I did do the full 10 days. I struggled. It's all new and novel for the first couple of days, but then not being able to write anything down, journal, not being able to read anything, not having a book to read, it was completely vegetarian, all the food. There weren't my size portions, and not having that protein. And then we woke up with the sun at 5 a.m, ready for 5:30 meditation, which was a yoga meditation. Then we would have breakfast, then we'd have a walking meditation, we'd do working meditation, we'd do sitting meditation, we'd do standing meditation, we'd do lying down meditation. Pretty much we broke for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and that was it. Otherwise we were doing some form of meditation the whole of the rest of our waking time. And like I say, our waking time was from 5:30 in the morning, cold showers, and finished at by 8 o'clock we were in bed. And it was silent, so there was no conversation at lunch, there was no conversation anytime. And that was part of the point, particularly when you were eating, that there wasn't any of the distractions, and you could wholly focus on what you were eating, which I think was then what made you feel like you were full, which is all the things that they talk about when you're looking to lose weight or whatever, is be very mindful when you're eating and things. So 10 days I was in there. I came out able to meditate and able to meditate for a decent amount of time, and I was absolutely adamant that I was going to continue doing that, because the vegetarian diet, the meditation, the no alcohol, no smoking, no none of that. That was when I gave up smoking. Couldn't smoke when I was in there, and I came out a non-smoker, and I haven't smoked since. And the vegetarian diet just seemed to cleanse, and things just went through better, easier. So I came out, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, and I didn't eat meat. I stuck with the vegetarian diet, which is very easy to do in Thailand. And I also felt like I connected more with my intuition, and I maybe didn't connect more. I'd done Reiki a few years earlier, and at that time I thought my intuition had got better, but my Reiki master then had said to me it hadn't got better, you're just listening to it. And it was very similar when I came out of the What. I was much more tuned in with it, so did listen to it, and it was probably only 3 or 4 days after coming out of the What, and I woke up one morning and thought I need to go to New Zealand. So I walked into Tong Salar, saw my little travel agent lady, and booked a flight out to New Zealand the next day. I emailed a young lad who had been at Charm for a while, working at the veterinary surgery, and he was had gone over to New Zealand and was working in a veterinary surgery in New Zealand. Emailed him, asked him if there's any chance that he wanted to travel around New Zealand, or at least could I see him when I got there. And I emailed my friends Phil and Bev, who I'd seen when I went down to KL to stay with my nephew. They lived in Melbourne. And I emailed Jim, who was one of Paul's friends that I'd met in the UK, an Australian, who also lived in Melbourne, to see if they were around. And it all very synchronistically worked out. The trainee vet, he said, yeah, no problem, I'll take 2 weeks off, I'll meet you just at the bottom tip of the North Island, and we'll travel around the South Island, which we did. It was awesome. Had an absolutely amazing time in New Zealand. Absolutely loved it. Did Milford Sound, Christchurch, went swimming with dolphins, met Martin and Claire, who kept in touch with Martin for a while after, and Claire became a very, very, very good friend back here. And so that was a life-changing experience. And then my flight back to Thailand via Melbourne to pop in and see Phil and Bev and Jim. And I kept up the meditation. I kept up being vegetarian. I didn't keep up not drinking. And then I got back to Koh Phangan, and I started writing Connecting Trains. So Connecting Trains was based back here, and obviously I'd lived here for years and years, so it was very much from memory. But also Connecting Trains was, I planned it as much more of a police procedural. You know, Goodwin is a British detective. He is a policeman. Tie-Dye was just set in Thailand because I lived in Thailand at the time, and first novel, exotic location, I did that. But then he had to, have a case back in the UK, and so I wrote Connecting Trains in that second 6 months. with doing a lot of the research on PACE and all of the other procedural things for the police while I was in Thailand. And I got put in touch with a very, very helpful DI in Essex Police who reviewed my book, reviewed Connecting Trains for me. And so he was reading it and feeding back all the time that I was in Thailand. And that was the first time I probably put anything out there like that. And I was really pleased with his feedback. He said that it was the closest to a police procedural that he'd ever read. So I went back to this very similar routine. It got broken up with going into Wat Khao Tam. It got broken up with my trip to Malaysia. It got broken up with the trip over to Cambodia. But otherwise, I stuck to the same routine: 3 hours writing every morning, which wouldn't always be writing. Sometimes it would be the research on the police procedural side. And then that was really it for what I did in those second 6 months. A lot of travelling and the writing of the second book. Then it came to the end of 2003 and time to come home. And I came home and then I wanted to continue writing. I really wanted to continue writing. So I took just a very part-time job in order to just earn enough to pay the mortgage and continued living off my savings for living and writing. I joined a writers group locally and continued writing, started doing a few articles and things like that. And then life got in the way, I suppose, being back here and having bills and commitments that you sort of don't when you're on hold for a year, I suppose. So I fell pregnant in the middle of 2004 and my dad got sicker. So by 18 months after coming home from Thailand, I'd had a baby and my dad had died. So my whole life changed in that 2.5 year period, from first going out when Paul had his accident. My life had completely changed. I no longer worked in IT. I'd had a year living in Thailand. I'd written 2 novels. I'd fallen pregnant. Actually, I found out I was pregnant in Thailand, which I know that doesn't make sense time-wise. I'd come home, and I had gone back in the August of 2004 to go to Liam and Orr's wedding, which was, I was very privileged to be invited to the wedding. I was the only Farang woman. You get the odd Farang man at a Thai wedding, but I was the only Farang woman, and I was part of this procession. Piek also got engaged, and I was very privileged to be a part of that ceremony and a key person in that ceremony when he asked her father for her hand in marriage. And I have some fantastic photos of the wedding and everything that I went back for that following year. And it was while I was there that I found out I was pregnant, and I knew that her dad was going to walk away, so I made the choice, to have Lauren and live my life as a single mum then. So yeah, in the space of those 3 years, my life completely changed. I was well on the up in an IT career, and that was it, really. And within the next 3 years, I'd lost my dad, I'd had a baby, I'd lived in Thailand for a year, I'd written 2 novels, and I'd travelled extensively in Asia and Australia and New Zealand, and none of it was planned or anything. So it was an amazing time, a lot of change, and my life wasn't the same again. But I did nothing with tie-dye. I had sent it to publishers in Bangkok, and it was accepted, and they did want to publish it, but they stipulated only in Asia. Couldn't publish it anywhere else, and I didn't want to do that. So then really tie-dye sat with nothing until I edited it a few times in the years after I came back, but I didn't pick it up again and get it ready for publication until 2013. So that's it, really. That is the end of Stories Behind My Story tie-dye. And I'm going to take a 3-week break now, and then I will start the Story Behind My Stories Connecting Trains. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've read tie-dye and you enjoyed it, and please do continue reading the series and continue listening to the Story Behind My Stories, because there is a story behind every one. Bye.